September 24, 2024 meeting of the Dexter Township Planning Commission will now please come to order. For introductions and just to ensure that we have a quorum, I'm Marty Stroud. To my left, your right, Chandra Hurd, Gretchen Driscoll, Steve Birch, Tom Lewis, Alicia Abbott, and Christy Mayer. We are at full strength tonight. Please rise and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Next item of business, conflict of interest review. Does any member of the Planning Commission have a conflict of interest with any of our agenda items tonight? Seeing none, approval of the agenda. Anybody like to add, subtract, reorder anything? Seeing none, the agenda will be approved as submitted. Brings us up to public comment. Any member of the public care to address the Planning Commission on any issue? Seeing none, we opened and closed it at 6:01. We have no public hearings, no action items. Brings us to agenda item 8, of which there are 2 discussion items. So the first, the renewable energy zoning ordinance amendments. Our discussion at our previous meeting, we converged upon a workable, incompatible ordinance. And our planning consultant, planning officer, has reworked the ordinance accordingly. We, with the input that we had on what we had in front of us last time and some of the comments that we made. I don't think I had anything substantive, but unless anybody has an objection, I'd kind of like to go through page by page. So if anybody had, anything of any importance or just typos, we can kind of catch those in an orderly manner. Anybody have anything they'd like to start in with? First few pages are definitions. Did anybody have anything on page 1? Or 2?
I had some. I'm sorry. Number 1,
Okay.
under 6, it says a renewable energy, last sentence, a renewable energy facility does not include,
Oh, good one.
and I think it's, maybe should just to be taken out.
Okay.
All right, thank you.
What should it say, Chrissy?
I think the phrase, there's just a sentence fragment that should be deleted.
Okay, go in there.
So the whole thing?
Just
Just-
this,
Yeah, that's what I
Just
thought,
that.
okay.
just the last phrase.
Part of a sentence, yeah.
Actually, if I can say something, I think it's a renewable energy. Include,
Could include?
no, does not include, it should not include an accessory solar energy system or an experimental or a micro or a wind energy conversion system that's experimental, a wind energy conversion system that's micro, or a wind energy system that's small, because all of those are below a utility level.
Okay.
All right, so you can get that fixed up for next time?
Yes.
All right, thank you. Anybody else have anything else on the first page? Second page? Page 3?
I had, under U, where it says total height less than or equal to the permitted building height.
Should be height.
Height, yeah.
Yep.
Thank you. Page 4? Page 5? On page 5, at the top of the page, under D, allows special land use for renewable energy facilities related structure, district zone for agriculture, in parentheses, A1. I don't think we actually have an A1, do we? I think we just, our agriculture, we just call ag. There may have been someplace, and I looked it up in the master plan and didn't see it. There may have been someplace where we had some future, more finely defined zoning, but I'm pretty sure as it is now, we just have ag. So maybe just check that out. If I'm wrong, let me know.
It should be AG
Okay,
instead of A1.
yep, that sounds good then.
Apologies.
Anything else on 5?
Actually, I have a question about the trees. They don't, I just wanna understand this, have a little more clarification. So it says all unhealthy, 60% dead or greater, and dead material shall be replaced by the applicant within 1 year. So if they have, like, say, 2 or 3 trees, but they have, are they not, they can just wait until 60%?
I think 60%, that's not overall, that's like 60% of the tree.
That's-
Okay,
Because
that's
sometimes
what
you
I
might-
wanted to know, was
That's
if
how
it
I
was
took it,
60% of
but-
the trees or 60% of each tree.
But,
So can
Is-
we tighten that
yeah, so.
to make
it's-
that be more clear,
so
because I
it's
feel
just
like that's a
about
wiggle.
Each tree, yeah.
Right, okay, great.
Anything else on page 5? Page 6? 7?
I had a question about the little sub-IV. It's about water utilities. As written, does that include private wells?
I think it could, but we can make it size and location of existing proposed water utilities, including proposed connections to public or private community sewer or water supply systems. I can just put something including private wells.
Okay.
Thank you. Page 8. Page 9 at the top of the page. Back in the old days, when I was around, it was the Washtenaw County Drain Commissioner, but ask trustee Driscoll, it is now Water Resources Commissioner, correct? So we should get that updated.
You're at the top of page,
Top of page 9, that first line, it should just say, get rid of drain, and it should say County Water Resources Commissioner.
which item is it?
It's the
It's-
first, second, it's the first
Very
sentence.
first paragraph.
And, yeah, if you're going through
Top.
without page breaks, it's gonna be item N,
Oh, okay.
which I think is what, 5 N?
What, yeah,
Okay,
I've just added some things so it starts to run. Water.
And Mr. Chair, should that be capitalized as that is a position?
I think it should be, that's good.
County Water Resources Commissioner should be capitalized.
I will always defer, almost always defer to the former school teacher, who rarely leads me astray. Anything else on that page?
Can I ask a question?
Yep.
Should it say commissioner or commission? Because sometimes it's their staff that,
Or
I
should
think
it
that
say
the intent is
commissioner
the
or
department.
representative or designee? Is
I
that how
think the
we've done it?
intent is the department, but
Yeah,
I don't
so
know.
if that's the intent, I would say Water Resources Commission. Because that's the department and the staff, rather than
yeah,
the
it
commissioner,
seems
that's,
reasonable to me.
yeah, an elected position.
Mr. Chair, I have a comment question on the fire response plan. We're talking about item small I, evidence of consultation with the Dexter Area Fire Department, et cetera, et cetera. To to ensure that the FRP is in alignment with acceptable operating procedures, capabilities, resources, et cetera. But there is no place in here that the fire department is notified of or requiring a posting on the building of the hazardous material or potentially hazardous material, which in an energy storage facility is a very real possibility.
You know, I have lost track of this, maybe somebody else knows, but back in the eighties, Washtenaw County adopted a right-to-know ordinance that I think would address what you're talking about. I assume that it's still on the books, but I don't know if it is, and I don't know, who or how it's being enforced, but I think that's right aligned with what you're talking about.
Oh, it is, and I agree with you. However, and I would never challenge the wisdom of my chair, but the assumptions can sometimes be dangerous.
If I'm understanding your point, I think it would be a good idea to make sure that regardless of what other regulations that we've got, the stuff you're talking about covered locally, placarded or, a list at the gate, or it has been incorporated for any of the first responders. Now, asking our planning officer, I'm not sure how best to accomplish that, but I'll bet you do know.
So I'm just gonna add a comment list at the gate for the first responders, consult with DFD. What I'd like to do is, after tonight, if you feel like this is ready to go for a public hearing, to share it with the township attorney and also to route it through Dexter Area Fire Department for their comments, and I can ask them that specific question.
That would be excellent, thank you.
So, okay.
I just had a typo on page 9. Dexter Area Fire Department, the A is missing from area, both in
Oh, my gosh.
little a, little 1 and little VI.
And I would have guaranteed that I read that multiple times. Yeah, good catch, thank you. Anything else on 9? How about 10?
I had a question on little paragraph R, where it talks about sound emitted from the facilities will remain below the statutory limit. Is the word statutory, is there something in the original statute that governs the sound level? Or is it within our own ordinance?
I think it is mentioned because I think later on in here, it refers to, I don't remember, 55 or, 55 decibels, which I've got a question on. And that seems to, if I could look in here, that may be one of the things that was allowed for under the state act.
Yeah, but since you're doing a workable incompatible, you can go stricter. So I think what I could do is, in those cases, go back and look at Raisin Township and see what their sound levels were, and we could use that as a model.
Yeah, so let's tighten that then, so we remove the, the vagueness of statutory, because we don't know what statute might be referring to. Anything else on 10?
I just had a typo in the chart.
Sorry, where?
In the little chart about setback distance.
Okay.
Where it says public road right-of-way. In the second column, it's height to the edge of the public road has an extra E on it.
Feet measured from the nearest edge of the road.
No, I'm sorry, it's on page 12.
Uh-huh.
So So it's about the,
Wind,
wind, so it's 1.1 times the maximum blade tip.
I see it, yes. Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Gotcha, thank you. I had a couple of comments on page 12 at the top under small II, fencing for the solar energy facility complies with what is, it should be National Electrical Code. It says National Electric Code. It's actually National Electrical Code. And then in small Roman numeral 4, IV, and after this, where it says, in this case, it's talking about solar energy facility does not generate a maximum sound in excess of 55 average hourly decibels. And while that maybe seems to be some standard wording, and I don't claim to be an expert in this is not my field of expertise. I'm curious as to how it's calculated, because numerical average is gonna be all confused, because decibels are a logarithmic scale, so you can't take 50 plus 60 and average it out to 55 and have that make any sense. There are some other methods, I think, I don't know, semi-commonly accepted methods. LEQ, which is equivalent continuous sound level, or LDN or CNEL, which is a community noise exposure level, which may average it over the course of a 24-hour period, but it would have a penalty in the evening hours. One of them is a penalty from like 7 to 10 p.m. and then 10 p.m. to 7 a.m., a 10 decibel penalty. I think there's another way of doing it where anytime after 7 or 10, it's just a 10 decibel penalty. But anyhow, if you could look into that a little bit more and see, I just want to make sure that we are defining that properly. Or, properly, probably not the right word, but defining it so it achieves the result that we anticipate.
Okay, I have that. You had a typographical error where,
It's
was
right,
that in item II right above that, or
Yeah.
was that?
electrical, not electric.
Yeah.
It's the second line on II.
The energy storage facility complies with the version and NAPA code standard for,
No, it must be,
And the solar
must be
energy.
below that, because the pages have been changed on yours, page break,
It's
so
under
under
application.
6,
Yeah.
yeah, 6B, Roman numeral 2.
6B Roman numeral 2. Okay, hold on. 6D as in dog?
No, B like Bravo. So,
Oh, National Electrical Code.
yeah, there you go.
Okay, thank you.
Anybody have anything else on 12? On 13, I had something marked here on Roman numeral 4. Wind energy facility does not generate maximum sound in excess of 55 average hourly. So same, I think all I've got here is that it's the same comment that I just made on the solar. I think it occurs another 1 or 2 times in here. Anybody else have anything on 13?
I did. Because the little chart with setbacks, we had changed solar from 50 feet to 100 feet. This is still, for the energy storage, 50 feet setback from the road and the non-participating properties. should that be 50 or 100?
When I read it, I was viewing it differently. The short answer to your question is, I don't know, but I differentiated between, you know, wind needs to be a lot, solar needs to be less. And for battery storage, I just kind of rationalized that, okay, I get it why that might only be 50 feet, but here we are, we can make it whatever we'd like it to be.
What was the underlying reason for the 100? Was basically the aesthetics of it, being off the road?
Yeah,
farther?
I applied some real fuzzy math last time that I'm just kind of envisioning that got a property line, you know, setback. You're gonna have maybe a berm, some decent sized plants, couple rows of them, so you kind of block the view driving by. And I don't remember if I said 100 feet, but I could easily see where, well, you have 50 feet, but maybe it was 50 more feet is how we came up with that.
So I think that, I think those came from PA 233 is
Okay.
where the 50 feet is from. So I didn't update that table. I kept what was in PA 233. If you look at your site development standards for commercial, which is the closest zoning district that you would have, the side yard setback, the rear yard setback, are 50 feet, 30 feet when it's adjacent to property zone C or PI. And then generally, they have a 50-foot setback from some roads, your major roads, they have an 80-foot setback. And then from local private roads, there's 25 foot setback. That's kind of how you treat things along the way. So these usually are like 5 acres, 10 acres. They're not really big facilities. They're gonna be fenced, just because of the nature of what they are. You know, you could get into a point with 100 feet where if you're not treating other places that are similar, with that, in terms of those setbacks, and also you're shrinking the lot a lot, like 100 feet in, or 50 feet in, you know, you're doubling the size of the non-usable land when you're going from 50 to 100 feet.
And I don't know that I've read this anyplace. I guess I just made assumptions from some of the pictures that we've seen that battery storage is like 8 or 10 feet high. Do we know that?
Yeah, no, it's like a storage container, so
A
like,
storage container typically would be 8 feet high, because it's gonna ride on a semi that can only be 13.6 high, so.
sometimes they might stack them to one,
Okay,
so, but,
so in that case, part of the logic of the 100 feet, I guess, was in the full tilted position, we've got a limitation of 20 feet for the solar panels. If these things could be as high as 16 feet, 18 feet, to try to manage the site distances, what do I wanna say? Like interrupt the sight lines and preserve the rural appearance. Do we need more than 50 feet?
I would say,
Can we comment at all? I thought we could comment that there's need, or not.
No, we should not, because that could open it up for free-for-all. However, if the planning commission does not object to me breaking the rules and hearing from Lois, because we're in deliberations, it would be good for us to operate with as much knowledge as possible. And I would also offer that up to anybody else that cares to address this at this point, so
Okay.
please.
I appreciate that. The only reason I wanted to address this is because, for 2 reasons. I lived in Canton, and I was in a condo. And back of me, I was on Cherry Hill, just backed off from Canton Center Road. And when that property was going to be developed, we had a very big discussion from our condo group, especially the ones on the west side. especially from the west side, and I face that west side. And when you have a building that's going to be looking at you, and this, the energy things remind me of that, also the solar panels, you want as much livable distance between you and that solar panel, or that energy facility. We want as much between us and the medical building that was gonna be behind us, and the other buildings. We had concerns about lighting, we had concerns about the distance. Well, one of my neighbors wanted a brick wall. No, we don't want a brick wall. We worked with the township there, the normal distance when their building is 30 feet. And we squeezed it up to 50 feet. And made a big difference in the end. The other thing that we looked at was shrubbery. And we had a township board member at the time who didn't want all this shrubbery. And so we couldn't get everything we asked for. But it made a difference where the people had the evergreens and where we had nothing. And we also had a berm. We had a 6-foot berm. Our berm went from 3 feet to 6. So that was an issue. And we did have enough shrubbery in the end, and we had a decent kind of border between us. I bring that up here because I live on a cornfield. And if somebody puts energy batteries there, I'm 50 feet now from the edge of that cornfield to my structure. And I don't care, it's fine. But if you go put these 16 feet things in there, I would think 300 feet is too close to my house with those things. And the noise is another issue when you talk about your decibels. I was very glad you're gonna get clarification on that, because 55 is pretty loud. And those energy tanks, or cases, whatever you wanna call them, are gonna bzzz like crazy. Now, if you think that 55 decibels is low enough, and the evidence I have for that is when they built the medical building next to us, or in back of us, they were constructing and thought, well, we have to get this place dried out. They were constructing, and they had to get humidity out of it. They had these horrible fans running 24 hours a day. I couldn't sleep at night. And so I negotiated with the landowner at that time and said, can you turn that thing off between 11 at night and 7 in the morning? And fortunately, they agreed to it, so we could have peace and sleep at night, plus my other neighbors down the road. So these things are critically important in some cases. Now, not everybody lives in front of a cornfield, but it's a possibility, and I'm in distress. So if I think 300 feet, that's really great, and you have to realize all this landscaping won't be there the day you put it up. It's gonna take 10 years for it to look really good. So that's just some thoughts that I have. Thank you for listening.
Thank you. And maybe, Madam Recording Secretary, just so I didn't break protocol too much.
624.
That's good. Yep, the chair reopened citizens' participation, and
624.
Ms. Birnbaum spoke. Thank you. Anybody else? Just since we're talking about sound a little bit, 55 decibels isn't supposed to be, and again, I'm no expert, it's not supposed to be objectionable on its own. The thing that I think would bug me is if it's constant, or if it's like Lois is talking about, there's a buzz. You know, even a hum, a buzz that is much less than that, I think could get annoying. Now, we've got to come up with reasonable regulations so that the township is dealing with this and can work with the applicants to get, you know, more of what we want, and if they don't like it, they can go to MPSC and get probably more than what we're willing to offer, so we need to maintain some balance there. But back on page 13, occupied buildings, the setback has to be 300 feet. The question that we were dealing with was road right-of-way or a property line being 50 feet. near property line is gonna be 300 feet from the structure, but I'm more thinking about what do we wanna see driving by? Or what do we wanna see on, or from adjacent properties? You've got the isolation distance, but still, you've got the site, SIGHT, site you're gonna be looking at. Is 50 feet what we think we need? Anybody? Hearing no comment, I think we kind of have consensus that the way it's written is okay, but we should perhaps reflect on that between now and our next meeting, which will be the public hearing. Anything else on 13? On 14, I've got the same comment. This occurs under Roman numeral 3 about the 55 average hourly decibels.
Marty,
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Chairman, I just took a quick look at the act itself, and the act says 55 decibels for all three types of systems.
Thank you.
Mhm.
Anybody have anything else on 14? 15? The question that I had on 15, under H, about material damages to a public road within township resulting from construction, maintenance, operation, how do we actually enforce something like that? So there will be some sort of escrow money for the decommissioning, but how is it typically enforced if somebody putting in a development or anything damages the roads? Do we rely upon them to, well, hey, that's what you agreed to?
So
Or
this
is there money put in escrow or a bond or what?
This is an unusual provision for a zoning ordinance, like, the only other places I've seen something like this was for an extraction use.
Okay,
And so usually what they do is they evaluate the escrow every year, and they may take it out of that, and things like that. This is from Raisin Township's, ordinance, and so, I mean, we can go back to them and ask them if they've had to do this and what method that they've used, but I would think that you would use some of the escrow that you have, and then require them to replenish it.
all right. I just wanna make sure that we don't have something in here that's kinda,
What about, as part of the inspection, that it can't be operational till the road's fixed?
You could do that if.
Isn't that what this is doing?
Right, for the construction, maintenance, or operation. So for the construction, definitely, you could hold them, if they damage the road during construction, you can hold them, their certificate of occupancy, or whatever that is for a renewable energy facility, or their zoning permit, until they fix it, or they give them the township enough money to fix it. But let's say it's operating, and then there are damages, then
Oh, I see,
that's what I was reacting to in terms of the chair's comment.
I see, okay.
anything else on 15? And 16, we've got one paragraph, that's just kind of math, if this follows the sequence that we hope it will. And if it doesn't follow that sequence, you're gonna put a different date in there.
Yeah.
All right. Anybody, now that we've gone through it page by page, just conceptually, what does everybody think? Is this what we want to, with the changes that we've mentioned, is this what we want to put forward to the public hearing at our next meeting, our October meeting. Is that October 24th?
22nd.
Thank you, 22nd. Yes, ma'am.
Well, first of all, I'd like to compliment our planner for doing this with a week turnaround, because I think there was a lot to put together. And, you know, we talked about this last week, that this is to protect the township, and I think that, personally, I think it looks great. And, that we do the best we can to address the issues that came up in the community town hall. And hopefully, you know, if somebody does do a project here, they won't say this is unreasonable.
Yeah, I really appreciate that point. Yeah, certainly I second that, yeah, this was turned around in real quick time. But yes, it all ties back to the community engagement and what we heard from the people that had given us input through, you know, comment surveys in person. And yeah, because of that, you would think that if we listen to our residents and put something together that reflects their wishes, that it should work. I guess we'll see how compatible our workable, incompatible ordinance might be.
I thought it was very good. I thought it turned out, after our discussion on the 16th, I thought this really turned out very well. And I would think we could move this along to the next step.
Per our agenda, we don't actually have a decision point on that, like an action item, but I think our consensus is, it wouldn't be out of order if somebody wanted to move that, but I think our consensus is, yeah, let's put the agenda together based on this
So to,
modified document for the public hearing on the 22nd.
public hearing on the 22nd, okay.
I think there was a request for public comment.
Oh my gosh, these guys are gonna fire me. They're gonna elect somebody else chair next week.
Just a question, that, I know you have to add little modifications tonight. Will they be in what you present on the 22nd?
Yes,
Yes.
yes, ma'am.
Yeah, those decibel things, I've been through it, that's why I'm so concerned. Thank you.
Thank you.
Do you want me to come up there?
Ask Janice, she's really the one that requires it in the microphone.
I don't see the green light on, so you might come up and push the button and talk into it.
I didn't shut it off.
Oh, you shut it off?
No, I did not.
Maybe,
Well,
does
it
it
times
time
out.
Oh,
out?
it times
It
out.
times out, so. Thank you, Michelle.
I haven't been on this side since,
Yeah.
I was down with the land
It's
preservation.
on this side where your finger is, this side, there's a button,
This?
push it till it turns green.
Not green. Can you hear me?
No.
I'm not green or red. It's just red. See? It needs a battery. It needs a battery.
Energy.
Okay, I also want to thank you for, working on this local control ordinance, the whole planning commission, very, very much appreciated. My question, and Mr. Stroud probably would know this answer, Oak Hill Drive off of Madden Road, where the high-tension towers, commonly referred to as the transmission lines, what is that sound? Is that what the noise would be on these solar panels? Does anyone know? And I
Yeah,
just-
number one, I do not know the answer to that. Number two, do we know, is the sound actually from the transmission lines or Majestic Station, which is right down the hill from it? Because while I have not been back in there, I would kind of expect that there'd be a buzzing with all the transformers and that. In fact, Mr. Birch is probably,
Or both of
more
you
expert in that
are
high-tech
familiar with when
stuff.
Oak Hill Drive came and they wanted to bring those towers very close in proximity to their home. They can still hear that noise. We actually mow there as well, off of Oak Hill Drive, and when we shut them off, we can hear the humming. And so I was just
I've
curious,
heard-
how far far
I've heard
away all those
crackling in
towers.
high tension lines, I'm not,
This
that was
just
probably when I was a kid, I'm not sure
consistent,
about humming. But everything, you know, everything that has AC current going through it is gonna set up, yeah, a frequency, and I suppose, like a lot of other mechanical systems, you get a harmonic in that might be independent of, you know, what else is going on. It might be more of a mechanical buzz that, you know, I know nothing about what I'm talking about relative to high tension lines, but sometimes you can change almost always you can change the harmonic just by hanging a weight on it. I don't know, anybody check that out with, who is that, ITC that owns transmission?
Yes. And my experience with that Majestic Station area is basically outside the fence of the Majestic Station. This is the first time I have ever heard of a complaint that was external to the station itself.
There was a pretty, probably 4 of those homeowners did a petition and went door to door. This was years and years ago, of course, when they went in. But do you guys, I'm just trying to, you know, just gain a perspective of how far away those towers are from those homes. I'm just trying to perceive, okay, 50 feet to 100 feet. I just wondered if this board knew that information.
Yeah, I do not know.
And there's no berm, there isn't, I mean, it was just the normal woods, so there's nothing that would actually bounce that noise away.
Yeah, do
but-
not know the answer to that, I'm sorry.
No worries. That's it.
Thank you for asking.
I'm kind of open.
I've totally lost control of it. If these guys don't drag me out of here and toss me out in the street, yeah, go ahead, let's, because we are learning in this process, I appreciate it.
Another learning experience, and I hear what Michelle is saying, in my wonderful condo experience again. Off of Cherry Hill, there was our condo complex. There was a park that the township had, and then there was a transmission line row for DTE, and then a subdivision. I used to walk my dog from my condo to get to the park, and sometimes if I went around Campus Center, I would come through those transmission lines. And they were humming and buzzing all the time. I remember one experience I had my dog, and she had something happen to her leash, and I bent down to touch the clasp of her leash, I got a shock.
Darn.
So those things are buzzing all the time. I used to hear them, I was very short, it was like a kitty corner that I had to walk. But I was hurrying up, I didn't want to be under there very long. They do buzz, and a potential shock really scared me. I never touched that dog again at any leash. Just happening.
Thank you.
They do it.
Anybody else? Where am I? So if we're all okay with that, anybody object moving from item A, which is the zoning ordinance amendments for renewable energy, to B? So now we are in discussion item B, non-conforming contiguous lots zoning ordinance amendments. And perhaps our planning officer would like to present what this issue is, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So scrutiny came over section 2403 due to a single-family housing zoning permit. And really what this regulates is when 2 lots are under the same ownership and they're next door to each other, so they share a property line, or there's a street that separates them. And when that happens most often in your township, it's in Lake Residential, and especially when it's the separation of a private road or a road, usually one parcel is on the lake and one parcel is on the road and doesn't have lake access. And I've seen it where the road lot is where all the storage is, and the lake front is where the house is, but I've also seen the opposite as well, that the house was on the road parcel and that they use storage and access on the lakefront property. And what this is intended to do is to make sure that you're not increasing density in the lakefront residential zoning districts or anywhere because these lots are non-conforming. So when they're non-conforming and they're next to each other and they're separated by a road, they are treated as one lot. So that can get confusing, and the language was confusing. And then when we brought it to the township attorney, she also said, you really can't, this says that people can't sell their property, and she said, we absolutely can't do that. So, to take out the word sold, but also just wanted to have, if you flip to page 22, or page 2 of my memo, page 22 of your packet, you'll see that instead of having a lot of shall, ands, and together, tried to separate them out, so that there's, if one or more of the conditions in A, B, or C happens, then, that's when it's not applicable, there could be an exception to this rule. So that's the reason that that's coming up. Mr. Chair, I don't know if you have more to add, because you were part of that discussion at the Ordinance Review Committee, and one of the things the Ordinance Review Committee requested was to also have a flow chart in some ways, like some sort of graphic. I couldn't put that together in time, but wanted to bring this to you. It's something that we would like to have cleaned up, and while you already have a lot on your October agenda, because you have renewable energy, but you also have short-term rentals, because we received a petition to change the text of the zoning ordinance about that. It would be lovely if this could be at least taken up in November as a public hearing.
Adding on to that a little bit, yes, this came up in the Ordinance Review Committee, and I said, yeah, that makes sense to me, that township doesn't have any business whether, something could be sold or not. Upon further reflection, I have a concern about, and I think per your description, most of these cases are already, pre-existing non-conformances, they're legally recognized. What we don't want to do is set up a situation to where a non-conformance becomes a greater non-conformance. So if somebody, and maybe where that's most likely to occur is the description that you gave, you might have a lot on a lake, and most of this is gonna be on public sewer, so the minimum lot size in lake residential is gonna be ½ acre. What you might have, a quarter of an acre, and that's not even a good example, you've got an eighth of an acre here and an eighth of an acre there, separated by a road, so there might be some logic that, okay, I can sell that one off. This is going to be more non-conforming than it was, and now we just allowed somebody to create a non-conforming lot, which by this ordinance would not be buildable anyhow. It's a little bit different than the situation that I think brought this to us, but there are some similarities where, ooh, darn, somebody either doesn't understand that they can't do that, or we just allowed them to do something. And I guess my question for Megan is, so how do we deal with that part? So I think there's logic in all of this, but I'm kind of hung up on how do we make sure, in a different context, the Plat Act would prevent somebody from creating a non-conforming or an illegal piece of property, and it therefore cannot be registered at the County Register of Deeds, I think. How do we make sure that we don't unintentionally create some chaos where everybody can divide up their lots and somebody thinks that they can do something?
This is different. So there's a whole different section on creation of non-conforming lots, and how you split them. And so believe me, there's a very specific section on splitting
land divisions and then land combinations, and it expressly says that you can't make the situation worse. And that, like, let's say there's two parcels next to each other and somebody wants to give a piece to somebody else or sell a piece, it has to be that it actually, the bigger piece gives it to the smaller piece, is what the ordinance says. So there's a whole nother section for this.
But I think this is a little different in that for township purposes, we've got two different parcels, same ownership, but two different parcel ID numbers that for zoning purposes, we combine.
Mm-hmm.
But there's nothing that prevents them from selling the parcel that does not have the house on it.
That's correct. And then the township attorney said that that sold item was not enforceable and that she was not comfortable with that being changed. And if you look into your basic bundle of property rights, that's something that municipalities can't do in terms of, limiting somebody to the point where they can't sell it. And these are only parcels that were created and in existence before 2020. So at the time of the adoption of the ordinance.
I'm not certain, but I think in many cases before the ZBA, I gotta think about that. Maybe it's not many cases. I think there have been cases, however, where one of the conditions that the ZBA has imposed is you can't do anything with that. So if we combined, all of this and you wanted to build a garage, you can't uncombine that. While it's still maybe legally separate, I kind of recall under the David Rohr days that was one of his contingencies, that, okay, if you're gonna do that, you've gotta spend the money and get that combined into one property description.
Right,
It
so,
can't be two separate
yeah.
anymore.
And ideally to prevent this situation is that all of these would be combined and that you would allow a combination across a road.
But we only have the ability to request or require that if they tangle with township for some reason
Right.
that typically requires zoning board of appeals action.
Zoning Board of Appeals or Planning Commission action.
I don't wanna be overthinking it, but I don't wanna, I also don't want to inadvertently,
Yeah.
for every rule that has ever existed, somebody has figured out a way
Yeah.
around it, and I think it's just a matter of time.
Absolutely. And ideally, what you would do is you would change your zoning in Lake Residential so that it wasn't that the majority of lots were non-conforming, because that's your case. But that's a heavy lift, and that's a lot of change. And that's a lot of talking to the people in those areas so that they feel like they're secure and know what's happening. Because when you change that zoning, the minimum lot size and minimum lot widths, the unintended consequence is sometimes you create more land divisions that could happen legally. So right now you're kind of in a frozen spot. There's also things where, maybe you could do a map that, if we could go back to 2020 data and see all the ones that are like this. I know as sitting in the zoning administrator chair, and it would be lovely to have a map just to look at and say, oh yes, no, you can't do that. Yes, you can do that. And you could adopt a map like that, I think, but that would be another thing where that's a little creative. You need to talk to township, I think you need to have the township attorney on board and see how it goes. But for this is the best Band-Aid we could come up with to kind of make this language a little clearer, so that whoever's sitting in either my chair or your chairs understand, and the public can understand, when there are exceptions and when they're not.
So might there be a way to handle that administratively without any planning commission action in the near future? I get it, the township attorney doesn't want it to say, you can't sell it, but, the issue that came up could have been avoided if we had a flow chart.
Yeah.
Admittedly, there are some confusing areas in this. You've gotta check this, and then you've gotta check that. But that could be remedied administratively with a flow chart that would cover what you've written here.
But a flow chart is not necessarily enforceable and can get lost. If it's in the zoning ordinance, it's not going anywhere.
The problem with the zoning ordinance apparently was somebody did not interpret it correctly.
Right.
Flow chart might have helped.
Mm-hmm.
I think I understand what you're saying about, yeah, flow chart, that's like an adjunct to it, it's an aid, it's not a legal document unless we incorporate it into this. I'm a bit uncomfortable with, and maybe what I'd like is to see the attorney's actual opinion about what we're trying to do. And I don't wanna get, too far afield, but it might be worth, getting that written opinion and make sure that it's not only, well thought through, but also vetted and.
Yep.
And I'd just like to know, are we the only ones that say something like this?
A lot of zoning ordinances have a provision for what's called a zoning lot when you share a property line. I've been doing this over 20 years. This is the first zoning ordinance where I've seen that it goes across the street
Okay.
and treats them the same.
And I don't know how that came about, Steve, I don't know, you've been around a lot longer, it may predate you, but I thought that the township applied that interpretation because then it allowed people to come closer to doing what they're doing. If they combine these 2 or 3 lots, even if they're under different tax IDs, they're under common ownership. I don't know, I am familiar with 2 different parcels that were under common ownership that one day the tax bill just showed them as one. I presume somebody at the county combined those. I don't know how that actually happens.
If somebody wants to combine a parcel, they come here, they put in an application, we look at it for zoning, the assessor looks at it, then it's approved with a letter from the township supervisor, and then they have to go and record it at the applicant has to go
Yeah, this was
record it at
combined a number of
the-
years ago through no consultation with the property owners. So I'm not sure how that occurs, but that could be one solution, but yeah, who's gonna do that?
Yeah,
Little old Dexter Township gonna comb through all of these and
so.
go through the process you just described?
Mm-hmm. Yep, so what I'm hearing is to take this to the township attorney, get their opinion get their review of it, also get their opinion, an official opinion on why the word sold needs to be deleted, and then come back.
Well, that's just little old me, requesting that. What's everybody else's thought?
I'm ready to Mr. Chair, I am ready to move that our concern regarding non-conforming contiguous lots zoning ordinance amendment be deferred to our November meeting pending the response from the township attorney and the zoning officer to clarify the questions that we have raised here.
And is that, a motion?
That was
Wasn't paying that
intended to be a
much.
motion, yes.
Okay, moved by Birch, is there support? Motion is to move this issue to our November meeting, regular meeting pending input from the township attorney, correct?
Yes.
I'll second, Mayor.
Support by Mayor, is there any discussion, further discussion?
I have a question for that paragraph 3A, 1 through 3. I got the impression that, couldn't this be simplified by just referring it back to the standards of the ordinance? But then as I read this, this is giving some options where it's less than the standards of,
Yeah,
do you know why that is?
no,
That confuses the heck out of me. That whole paragraph would be simplified if it just referred back to the zoning district standards.
mhm,
I'm not sure about that part, but I think what this is, at least one of the things this is trying to improve upon is, it was like a logic puzzle before. You had that and that or that, and I think this was trying to clarify it by making it clearer, but yeah, I'm not sure about what you're saying, if that would just take care of it.
Yeah, I mean, this does have some exceptions at the end, so that, but even, if something was conforming in lot area, frontage and access and lot width, all three of those, then it's a conforming lot.
Right. Which I
So-
thought was maybe why it's an exception to this section.
So maybe if you just had the provisions, maybe you just had the exceptions instead of, all right.
Yeah, it could be. Any further discussion? Now, let's take a vote on the motion by Birch, supported by Mayor, to move this issue, the non-conforming contiguous lot zoning ordinance amendments, to our November regular meeting pending input from the township attorney. All those in favor, please say yes.
Yes.
Opposed, no. Motion carried. And that takes care of our discussion items for the evening. We have approval of planning commission minutes from our regular August meeting and the special meeting that we had last week. I think I had nothing for our August meeting. Let's just take these in chronological order. Anybody have anything for anything you wanted corrected, changed for the August 27th meeting minutes? Hearing none, could we have a motion to approve the minutes of our August 27th meeting?
I'll move to approve, Mayor.
Moved by Mayor, support
second,
Support.
by Birch. All those in favor, please say yes.
Yes.
Opposed, no. Motion carried. Second set of minutes is from our special meeting last week, September 16th. The only thing I had on that, at the very end, public comment, and Janice and I talked about this a little bit before the meeting, no public present to comment, and I think actually there was public present who chose not to comment. So either way, I think we could turn this into a true statement if we just change that to say no public commented. Anybody have an issue with that?
no. I mean, yes, no, I don't have an issue with this, sorry.
Anybody have anything else on these minutes?
Move to approve the minutes as amended.
Moved by Driscoll, is there support?
Support,
Support by Abbott. All those in favor, please say yes.
Yes.
All those opposed, no. Motion carried. Brings us up to correspondence. Does our planning officer have any correspondence for us?
Just our monthly report, which was in your packet.
mhm.
Township Board of Trustees update, anything that you care to share with us?
No? Not really.
Brings us up to 12, concerns of planning commission members, director of planning and zoning, township supervisor, recording secretary. Start with Megan.
So as I mentioned, we received a petition for short-term rentals, text amendment, so that will be at a public hearing on October 22nd, along with the renewable energy, so that will be a busy night.
When will we have that proposed text?
So that will be, I think by October 8th is when we have to have that's when the publication will go out in the newspaper.
But we don't need the text for the publication. Will it be published? And just anticipating, I don't know, rightly or wrongly, that this could be kind of an exciting issue for some folks.
So what the petitioner asked is that it be, short-term rentals per the regulation that's in Hamburg Township's zoning ordinance, in lake residential only. So what I was intending to do was to have that draft resolution, like the ones we've had before, give that to Sam, the office manager, and have her post it on the website, have a copy here at the township, that anybody could look at, and that's what we've done before, for when people can, so that, and at the time that it's advertised in the paper. So if people are interested, they can find it.
And
Can I?
can we have the notice say to refer to the township website and
It
whatever?
always does.
Okay.
So I think this is a pretty substantial issue, and there has been talk in the past about doing a task force or some kind of study, and I know a lot of other townships have done that, and that the state has tried to intervene, and take away local control. And I guess I'm kind of like questioning, can we move at that meeting to defer it and recommend to the board, make a recommend? I guess my concern is, like, I think it's complicated, and so what,
So what you could do is, you have to respond to the petition. You have to respond to the request for the text amendment. You could amend what they said, or you could recommend, and you would recommend approval or denial to the township board. You could recommend, approval with changes, but you could also recommend denial, but in that motion say, we feel like this is a issue that warrants more study, and isn't appropriate at this time, or you need to do X, Y, and Z. So you'll need to say something, you'll need to make a decision on the particular proposal that's been brought by
okay,
a member of the public by the Michigan Zoning Enabling Act. But you would be, and I'll include that in our letter, that you could say that we would recommend denial of this, but we feel like it's a worthwhile issue for the township to take up in a more substantial manner, because there's a lot of different options to look at.
correct, yeah. And then, are you gonna have a report on any enforcement or any kind of issues that we have right now with?
I can include what we've had, like so we've had one enforcement issue, and I will include that in the report. And then we did some research, and there are probably about 20 short-term rentals that are in existence using a free calculator. That it's really a service that if you own a VRBO or Airbnb, a short-term rental, you subscribe to that, or some like hotels subscribe to that, or I think the Ann Arbor, Washtenaw County Convention Visitor Bureau subscribes to it to know how many short-term rentals are around. So when we looked 4 months ago, before we got this petition, but we knew that there were some rumblings about that, there looked to be about 20 in the township.
Okay.
Does Hamburg restrict it also to only lakefront residential, or are they broader?
No, they're broader, but they also have a downtown area, like where they wanna, so, and I can include I'll include their text as well in your packet. As well as, I've started to develop something that if it fit into your ordinance, this is how it would look.
Yeah, I'm just curious, because I've stayed in Airbnbs, and some of them are geared to like farm properties, like you stay on a farm, so
Mm-hmm.
they're not lakefront.
Yeah, no, I asked the applicant what zoning districts, and the applicant has a piece of property in Lakes Residential, and so she said she wanted to limit it to that.
Anybody have any other questions on that? Did you have anything else
No.
for us?
No, and Michael Betcher's still, working hard but he just couldn't be here tonight because he's going to a planning convention, was leaving tonight for that.
All right, thank you. Commissioner Mayor,
Nothing for me.
Commissioner Abbott,
Nothing.
Commissioner Lewis, Commissioner Birch,
Nothing.
Trustee Driscoll.
Didn't you say you want to talk about the cleanup day?
Oh, I'm sorry, we did that before you came in.
I know, but for the public.
Oh, that's true. Yes, actually, I have what did I do with it? Here it is. Yeah, we are having the Dexter cleanup day on Saturday, October 26th from 9 a.m. to noon. And if you want to volunteer, it's a pretty fun time.
Even
Otherwise,
when it rains?
last year it rained the whole time. I stood out there for 4 hours in the rain, and I never stopped having a good time. So that means it's pretty fun to volunteer at.
You get donuts?
On
And-
free,
and
yes.
pizza?
There's donuts and coffee beforehand, and there's pizza afterwards for lunch. So I mean, it's a pretty decent deal,
So volunteering's a good deal.
right?
Okay, I don't have anything.
Right. Commissioner Hurd.
The only thing I have is a few months ago, we brought up, how staff is managing the approved zoning text amendments.
Yeah.
And how we receive in the future, those approved amendments for our ordinance that we carry. And whether our ordinance is updated on every 6 months or a year, we get a whole new one, or if we're gonna get individual pages.
We've had so many moving through, that I feel like what we could do is, there was 2 approved at the township board last week. One says are effective to update your book. And so we could give you whole new books, or we could just give you the sections that changed, and you could swap those out. I don't know which one would be better.
I mean, I think it's a
Probably.
decision everyone should make if it's, and
I-
it depends on how many pages there
Yeah, I
are,
hate
whether
to-
there's like 10 or 20 or 30.
I
Like,
hate
we've gone
suggesting
through a
that
lot.
the township wastes their paper, and I guess I would also say, years and years ago, I did business with a company whose core business was logging equipment for, pulp paper type pulp trees. And I said one day when I was in there, oh, I'm not going to waste a tree, just kind of being, smart aleck. And I had 3 people, those are raised just for that purposes, that's what our business is and all. So, the paper is mostly renewable and recyclable, but it's gonna cost township a little bit to do that. I just think for our purposes, aren't we better off not having to make sure that we've got like a page stuck in the right place, just generate new ones for everybody? It's a hassle, it's an expense, but I think we're probably better off, because if we don't have the straight thing, or we're all, kinda on different, literally different pages, we're gonna create some mistakes.
Okay. All right.
Now, the question is, at what point? Because we've got changes going on through into the end of the year. Maybe, as a practical matter, for whoever's on the planning commission, starting in January, we should just generate new books for everybody.
Okay.
Mr. Chair,
Sure.
I do have a, to me, relevant question here, because I frequently refer to the online version of the ordinance. I would like to find out who is responsible for and how frequently and how promptly is the ordinance updated after a change approved by the township board?
I do not know the answer to that, do you know?
My office is responsible, and that's something that needs to happen, so that was on the list for the last one. These last two that were, happened, we had it updated before the end of the summer, and then these others need to be added, and we'll get it up.
So 30 days?
Really, it should be when it's the effective date, so I'm admitting we can do better. And it should be at the effective date of the zoning ordinance amendment.
Thank you.
Anything else?
No.
Ms. Miller, anything for us?
No, sir.
Brings us up to public comment. Anybody care to address us in the for real official public comment?
Thank you for all your permission, I appreciate you.
Well, thank you for imparting your wisdom on us. This is, it's important that we get that participation, so thank you. So at 7:16, we have, nobody cares to address this. Future agenda items, I think we've discussed, nothing else?
Can we confirm what the future agenda items are?
I bet we can.
They would be, a public hearing on short-term rentals and a public hearing on renewable energy zoning ordinance.
For October
amendments.
22nd,
For
right?
October 22nd.
And then November, whatever it is, we're gonna take up the,
Non-conforming contiguous lots.
November 26th. Should we pause for just a moment and see how that falls with
Thanksgiving?
Thanksgiving? Make sure that
Yeah, it's the week of Thanksgiving.
well, October will be the public hearing on renewable energy. Well, it'll be public hearing on whatever, but especially renewable energy. When's the township?
It's the week before, 19.
So there may not be need for us to have a
November meeting.
November meeting, especially if people are gonna be out and concerned for getting back for this or not leaving, I guess, for this meeting. Concern about a quorum. Well, let's figure that out as we go forward, because, yeah, we will be done with the heavy lifting that we've been working on before the township board's meeting. That's the purpose of next month's public hearing.
I won't be in town the week of that week, so I can tell you I won't be able to attend a PC meeting.
I won't be here either.
And I'm not absolutely sure I will be.
Okay, so I'll put on the October 22nd agenda to rescheduling of,
Great, thank you.
and then also probably the December meeting, because that falls on Christmas Eve.
Well,
I can
well,
make
that could be a problem.
Yeah,
Not.
just slightly.
All right, well, that's
Good catch, Marty.
that's interesting. We'll figure our way through that. I think where I left off was, we should be done if someone would like to move adjournment. Janice and I talked about this ahead of time. I guess I'm empowered to just gavel this thing dead, but I would like to make sure that everybody is good with that. So how about a motion to adjourn, please?
I'll move. Mayor?
Moved by Mayor,
Second?
supported by Lewis. All those in favor, please say yes.
Yes.
All those opposed, no. Motion carried, meeting's adjourned. Thank you, everybody.